Hello, my name is Soreti Kadir, and you are about to watch an interview with Bekele Gerba. This interview hasn't been seen before just because it was supposed to be released at the All Men's First English program, but in light of the Oromo protests, in light of his recent arrest, which was about a month ago now, felt that it would not only be appropriate, but that it would be quite purposeful and powerful for people to be able to hear from Bekele Gerba himself. I met Bekele at the Oromo Studies Association at the beginning of August 2015, where he was a keynote speaker. And in the time that I spent with him, no matter how brief it was quite evident to me that he is somebody, will always be somebody, who puts the people first. And we've seen that time and time again. After being released 3 years after arrest, coming to the US, Bekele Gerba went back to Ethiopia, fully aware of the fate that could very easily meet him again, and almost like clockwork it did. And so, really, this is just a piece of Bekele Gerba that we want everybody to be able to be inspired by and feel inspired by. But yeah, enjoy. Today we're joined by a political activist, educator, father, Bekele Gerba. Welcome to Home in Exile. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Bekele, before we talk about your work and your life and why you're in America, I actually really want to get to know you and allow our audience the opportunity to get to know you. So tell us a little bit about where you grew up, your childhood, your teenage years.
Well, like any country boy, I was born in Western Oromia.
Yeah.
I was educated right there up to grade 8, and then I took my secondary education in a relatively better town, and then later I joined Addis Ababa University. My teenage years were spent like any other country boy in the countryside, drinking milk and then looking after cattle sometimes, sheep, goats and the like.
Right.
I spent very few months at least, if not years, and I enjoyed that life, and that was how I
so when did you move to the city, or a city?
Well, a city, actually, if you call city, I came to Adama only about 15 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And I spent the rest of my life maybe being transferred from one school to the other, in the countryside at Warada, or sometimes what they call district level.
Right.
So my biggest town was Adama, and that I joined. It was where you were born, and today it's a big city, in fact.
Yeah.
And then still my family are in Adama. I used to work in Finfine in Addis Ababa, but I shuttle between Adama and Addis Ababa, and really I enjoyed also the trip between Adama and Addis Ababa. That is how I spent. Yeah.
So, I mean, you're quite a late comer to politics. I think you entered the scene in about 2009.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you were doing before then and what actually drew you towards a political career?
Yeah, I was interested in politics right from my because from my youthhood, because I read literature, and usually I listen to this international broadcasts like the BBC and the like.
Right.
That will a little bit give you some kind of interest in politics and what is going on around the world and in the country. And but I was drawn into politics spontaneously because at some point the situation of the Oromos, which I witnessed around my village and also my hometown and the place where I grew up, and when all the people I grew up with go to jails, when their living situation goes on deteriorating, when so many university students are dismissed from the universities, and when a lot of atrocities are going around, especially that are targeted on the Oromos, I could no longer tolerate, and I decided to play some kind of role in politics. And while I was looking for maybe an appropriate kind of party, Atubulcha, the then chairman of OFDM, Oromo Federalist Democratic Movement, invited me, and right, I was in it. Right. Immediately I ran for an election, a seat in the House of Representatives, which I didn't succeed. And right, I found myself in politics all of a sudden.
Wow, that's quite a jump, you know. From
yeah, that's true.
So, I mean, you have been in, but like we established, you only came into politics in 2009, and what I wonder is, of all the political leaders that exist in the country, I understand that, you know, you have quite a huge influence back in Ethiopia, but why were you targeted by the regime?
Well, I don't know, maybe they thought me as a threat to the regime, that they thought me as someone who can mobilize the Oromo youth especially, and therefore, you know, when people usually ask about their rights, it's always that the rulers panic, like the regimes in Ethiopia. That is typical of them, that is characteristics of them. Therefore, I think it was mainly during the Arab Spring that movement was a huge one. You know, so many authoritarian rulers were deposed. So there was mass uprising around the world, especially in Arab countries. And maybe if it makes its headway into Ethiopia, if there are some people who could organize this kind of movement, one would be Bekele, and I think he must stay in prison.
And that fear, I think, you know, as you described, is what really drew the regime to you, because of your public profile. And that's kind of brings me to my next question, and you mentioned it about imprisonment. And we know that the Ethiopian government's, I guess, one of their biggest tactics in trying to marginalize Oromo people within the country is to isolate them, you know, with prison, and, you know, to try and break that spirit. And when I look at you, and I've heard you speak at OSA, and I've gotten to know you over the last couple of weeks, I don't feel like your spirit is broken. And so I wonder, what was that experience like for you in prison, and how has it affected, you know, your political perspective?
I think I consider myself in many ways as one of the most lucky people. One, I'm lucky because out of all these people, especially Oromos who went to prison, maybe I alone was the one that was not tortured, that has not undergone any torture. They were very kind to me for one reason or another, and I'm lucky in that sense. And then I was lucky to earn a lot of attention as well. For the country, maybe it is a kind of necessity, but for me it is simply a chance, because there are so many people who have been to prison and who are still in prison, who have not got much attention, and there are people who have spent their entire life struggling for the Oromo cause, and who have not gained any kind of attention. But I consider myself as a lucky person again, and this has given me more energy, and it has given me enthusiasm to push the struggle forward, even after I was released. While I was in prison, many people come and visit me, actually, even though the first 1 year and about 2 months were a kind of solitary confinement, where the most deadly criminals are kept. Anyway, even people kept coming in that place, and that visit has given me, you know, much encouragement. And also they supported my family. I was psychologically okay. My family was okay. My children and my wife are very understanding people. So I think it gave me that kind of courage.
Right.
And at the same time, there are so many Oromos from every corner of Oromia there, you know. It gave me a chance there to meet all of them, coming from Bale, from Harar, Wolaga, Jimma, or North Chawa, or Guji, Borana, every part of every corner. And I got that opportunity of talking with them, sharing ideas with them, and also that has also helped me. And in many ways, for me, it was a place where I learned, not in the hard way, but in a good way. I think it's an opportunity for me to be there and to learn the situation my people are in, because the great majority of prisoners, especially almost all the political prisoners until these 3 or 4 years, were all Oromos. Therefore, I think every person who maybe one day comes to the leadership of any party must learn the situation the Oromos are in, and that is why I was there, I hope.
You know, I don't know much about prison or a life in prison, but I do know that there are not many people who come out of an experience like that and call it an opportunity. And you know, so that is quite unique. And I'm wondering, what was the particular event or, you know, the particular action that propelled the Ethiopian government to take that action to imprison you? Was there something specific, or was it a sequence of things that just led to that?
Well, it is. This can only be guessed. I can only guess that one, there was this movement of the Arab Spring, and second, there were so many Oromos in prison. And as a party spokesperson, I used to communicate with human rights organizations like the Amnesty International. I used to report to them what is happening to these people. Therefore, I think that might have triggered them. And in fact, they warned me 1 or 2 times at least not to report to that kind of organizations. But we didn't agree. I didn't accept that, and I kept on reporting and communicating with them. And finally, 2 people from Amnesty International came to my office one day. They dropped into my office, and we had some discussion with them. And I had an appointment the next morning. Before that appointment, I found myself in prison.
Wow. And so, in your opinion, what are the most prevalent issues that Oromos and generally Ethiopians face within the country under the current government? You talk about a lot of things, a lack of education, land grabs, and a whole variety of different issues. But if you had to pick, say, two or three that are really crippling the growth of the country and, you know, specifically of Oromos, what would they be?
I think I consider the most important thing is freedom. Freedom means people are not able to elect their own rulers. That has brought about all the problems. The people are being ruled by the government that does not represent them, the government that they have not elected actually, that the government that they don't trust, and therefore the friction between the government forces and the public is obvious, and the freedom of expression, the freedom of thought, the freedom of media and everything is closed. Therefore, I consider that it is lack of democracy and good governance. If at all these were in place, I think the other things like development, good education, whatever will follow.
Right.
But now we are being governed by the government that we have not elected.
Right.
That's the problem. And we were trying to put in place the government that is elected by the government and accountable to its own people, rather than the Western countries or other NGOs or donors.
Right.
But that's what is happening. Yeah.
Right. And your presence in politics, both before and after your arrest, has brought quite a lot of attention to the issue of land grabbing within the country and how this has affected, the economic and social growth of Oromos. What is this issue? Is it a policy issue? Where does it stem from, and how does it kind of manifest in the context of the everyday life of a person living there? And what is the impact?
Well, land grab is not only a contest for wealth. It's not, but for us, especially for the Oromos, land grab is connected with eviction, and obviously this eviction it results in loss of identity, loss of one's language, loss of not only one's land but one's language, one's culture, and one's identity. Therefore, as land grab continues, we assume that our identity is at risk.
Right.
Therefore, that is why we stand against it, and why we are so much outspoken about it.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's a very serious issue for us around Addis Ababa. If you take long ago, Afan Oromo used to be the medium of communication, but now that is not the case. So this has resulted because of mainly the land grab. Some people, the Oromos, are evicted, and other people are settling on the land the Oromos left. Right. So eviction of one kind of identity and just putting in place another. So that is, we assume that this is what has happened to the Red Indians in America, and maybe the Aborigines in Australia.
Yeah. To many indigenous people across the globe.
Yeah.
And in the West, right, Ethiopia kind of has two narratives that are perpetuated in media and in many social spaces. You have the narrative of, of Ethiopia rising, of economic growth, of, achieving some sort of stability, not just economically, but also politically. And Ethiopia is quite revered by the West and is often used as an example of, an African country that has reached a particular stage or height. And then you also have the narrative that's quite contrary to this, of severe malnourishment, of a lack of education, of, like we mentioned, land grabs, of human rights violations. What is the reality in the actual country from what you've seen? Yeah,
it is in whose eyes the question is. For example, for a diaspora, for a person, for any visitor, or any government official that is not an Ethiopian, when he comes and visits this country, maybe may compare the buildings that are being built and the roads being constructed, and these things may be compared with the situation of 30, 40 years ago. But one thing is, this, to whom these buildings belong is one question. There is no equitable distribution of land and wealth. All the land, all the wealth, all the power, all the authority is given to a particular group, and the rest are lost. So the ones in power are putting in place their own culture and language. They are imposing their own culture and language, and the cultures and languages of other people is diminishing and as being destroyed. Therefore, we say that in the first place, there is no equitable distribution of wealth very few people are getting richer, and the majority are getting poorer. And the ones that are getting poorer are mainly the Oromos, we say, as their land is, this is their land. And the next thing is the data that the international community or even international organizations use to qualify Ethiopia as a developed country or as a developing country is mainly a cooked one, and that is obtained from the government, and that is not a data that would show the reality of the living standard of these people. So we cannot deny that maybe there may be a growth, like the national income, the gross national income, and maybe the per capita income might have risen, because we know that there are few people who have grown very much, and these people, the wealth of these people is being distributed to the poor people, and it seems that the living standard of the people have risen, but that's not the case.
So it's a facade.
Yeah, it is. The majority, as I said, are growing poorer, while these very few minority are skyrocketing. That is what is happening.
Right.
But when you add and then take the average, it seems like, you know, there is a rise in the level of the standard of living of the people, which is not a reality.
So I mean, you've been here now in America for, I think, 2 weeks. Has it been 2 weeks? Something like that?
2 weeks.
And I mean, the reception has been, I think it would be an understatement to just say it's been warm. It's been incredible. How have you found being here, being amongst the diaspora, being amongst a community that has reviewed you as a leader for so long and has finally gotten the chance to meet you and hear you speak? How's that experience been for you?
Yeah, the good thing I liked is we used to hear that the diaspora is very deeply divided along many lines, and but when I came here, I found that I think they are, if not united, they are not as divided as people think or say.
Right.
And I think it is also possible to bring them very close.
Right.
And maybe their differences is not wide, and it is mainly dependent upon maybe how to go about strengthening this Oromo struggle. The strategies may vary, and people may disagree around that strategies. And I think by coming and in my visit, all Oromos having various views and belonging to different religious sects and beliefs, they all came, they welcomed me, and I think I am enjoying my presence here, and I'm really very glad to be among my own people and to see them better united this time round. Yeah.
Well, it has been absolutely amazing having you here. Sad that we both have to leave soon. What do you think is the best way for the diaspora to, I guess, contribute to the Oromo struggle in whatever context? Where is our place, in a sense?
I think the first thing they have to do is they have to stop the feud amongst them.
So that's a very good point.
And just capitalize on just rational thinking, which method is better, and to contribute to the strategies I think works better. And I think they have to learn the principle of talking to one another around table and negotiate and fight around areas, and I think to come up with a kind of agreement to assist to assist what is going on for the freedom and the right of Oromos. So I think there are so many strategies that can be applied. For example, we strictly believe in non-violent struggle, but the worst strategy is no strategy. Yeah,
of course.
The worst strategy is someone who doesn't have any strategy, who sits idle and says, who comments without without donating, without helping, without contributing, without giving suggestions, comments, and without contributing anything in the construction. I think that is the worst strategy. Otherwise, for Oromos to have 3-4 parties or 10-20 parties is not much. It's not much. For 40 million people, that's not much for me. But so people must be logical, must listen to what they have to offer, have to attend the parties of the gatherings of every party, and then they have to support which they think is better. And also I think everyone must be determined to do that.
Right.
At least everybody has to contribute. It is only by helping one another that we may stand up like people, as people. Otherwise, I think the humiliation we are in now may linger a bit longer if we don't do that. Yeah.
So assistance, strategy, and all those things that you mentioned, extremely important. And I really like the assistance part, because I feel like a lot of the time the diaspora can move really quickly to try and define, instead of listening to what's actually happening on the ground. And so, I take those words with a lot of meaning. It kind of concludes our interview, but I was wondering if you had any words that you wanted to leave for young people, both in the diaspora and back home. You could think of people like your daughter Bonso, think of people like me. What would you say to them?
Yeah, I think it is time to rise up for the freedom of one's own people, because whether we live in the diaspora or in the country, sooner or later, if things go on like this, the Oromo identity is in great threat, risk. Therefore, we may not have a country we claim as Oromo, Oromia, or Oromo land after some time. Therefore, before things are out of hand, and before we are no more the owners of our own country, I think we have to contribute, and especially the youth must take the future into their own hands. Sometimes they have to forget the debates of the old diaspora, and I think they have to sit down and think about their own future and take their fate into their own hands by contributing now and here. I think that is what I can say.
Very important advice. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank
Bekele.
you.
I've enjoyed it immensely.
Okay. Yeah, it's a pleasure.